Okay, we ready? Okay, so let's go ahead and get started today. It's kind of odd speaking with no one in the audience, but in 1 second, I'll turn it over to our panelists, and then I'll be the audience, and you can talk to me.
Okay.
And then the people outside will just be able to see the back of my head, and Jamie as well. So we're very excited today for our Fulbright panel. We have various perspectives today, and I'll let Megan introduce the panel in a second. But we have people who have gone on Fulbright programs as students, people who have gone as faculty, and we have a visitor from Fulbright program who's currently visiting ECU from South Africa. So hopefully we'll get to hear several different perspectives. We are recording the session, so and we'll post this up on the website later on. And if you're listening now, you're either one of a handful of people out in the audience, or you are listening to the recording. So that's wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Megan Terry. Megan serves as a Fulbright liaison for ECU and assists primarily faculty who are interested in participating in the Fulbright program. We have several others of you who have been working with students throughout the last several years. But Megan has been our primary liaison for the faculty program, and she will talk a little bit about some opportunities that Fulbright affords you, and then also introduce our celebrity panelists today. And they'll tell you a little bit about their experiences. If you are in the audience and you'd like to ask some questions, please feel free to do so, either by raising your hand, or I'll be monitoring the chat as well. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask those, but we'll let them talk a little bit about their experiences before we get to questions. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Megan, and thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, thanks, John. So I'd like to welcome our panelists. What we're going to do today is I'll just kind of briefly go over some of the opportunities that are available for professional, I guess you could say, sort of postdoctoral U.S. scholars, and then we'll open it to our Fulbright panel, who will talk about their experiences, not only on the program, but negotiating, perhaps, how to take leave and that kind of thing. So we've got on our panel, we've got Christine Gustafson at the very end, who's in the School of Music. And Christine, I didn't get what year you were a Fulbrighter. In Korea, is it?
No, I was in Taiwan.
Taiwan,
for the most part, 2001 and 2002. I spent 6 weeks in China and had the opportunity to play with the China National Symphony.
That's amazing.
It was really amazing. It was a great year.
And then David Smith, who was a student Fulbrighter, he was back in the years of 1992 to 1993. So you can do the math there to see how old he is. He was a Fulbrighter in Leipzig, at the University of Leipzig, and it was to study and also do a little bit of graduate research at the beginning of his grad program. We've got David Siegel, who was a faculty member, Fulbright Scholar Award in 2011. He's with the Department of Educational Leadership in the College of Education, and he was at the University of Johannesburg in South Africa and worked a lot on lectures, workshops, and course development, that kind of thing. And then we've got our current visiting scholar here at ECU, Christian Bezuidenhout. He is a professor of criminology at the University of Pretoria in South Africa, and the past president of the African Criminological Society, and is here doing research on perceptions of female law enforcement officers here in the US, and is hosted by the Department of Criminal Justice in the College of Arts and Sciences. And also we have a virtual panel member, John Rice, who is an associate professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Utah State University. And he is our Fulbright ambassador. So this is one of the jobs that you take on after being a Fulbrighter, and you sort of do outreach work for the Fulbright, talking to faculty members or institutions who are interested in hosting a scholar, or if people interested in applying for a Fulbright themselves. He was a Fulbright scholar at Delft University of Technology in 2019, studying basically the erosion of, well, I'll just read the title because I'm not that proficient in what he was doing. So Dutch and US collaboration on assessing the microscale mechanics of backward erosion piping in dams and levees through inverse analyses. Excuse me. So the Fulbright, actually, we mostly think about, when we think about Fulbright Awards for US scholars, we think about the US Scholar Award. And this is just one of many opportunities actually that the Fulbright has. I'm going to drink some water. So the Fulbright US Scholar Award, faculty or people who are Fulbright scholars can engage in a combination of teaching or research or professional projects where you basically serve as a professional consultant or gain practical experience overseas. It's open to all early career scholars, all the way up to people who have emeritus status. And basically the thing of this program is that it is very prestigious, but as Fulbright likes to say, it's an elite program, but it's not an elitist program. So if you think that, oh, I'm not, proficient enough or good enough to be a Fulbright scholar, well, think again and, think about if you have a good project and you have good opportunities in this country to complete your project, you would be a very good Fulbright scholar. So you need to identify a host institution with whom you would be affiliated with in the country of interest. And so if you have an interest in the region or even within a particular country, but maybe you don't have any contacts there, this is where the Fulbright program officers can really help. And if you go onto the website, start searching around different programs, you'll notice that there are particular people who specialize in different regions or different countries. And they are there to help you sort of reach out and try to develop these contacts with an institution that maybe Fulbright has a pretty good working relationship with. You can also reach out to the US Embassy in that country. They often have officers who would be willing to help you sort of set up these kind of relationships. And they're open to, pretty much any discipline. There are some awards that are restricted to certain disciplines, but almost every country also has sort of an open discipline award as well. The award lengths vary by country, anywhere from 4 to 12 months, and you can do what's called a flex award in some countries where you sort of go for a couple of periods of time to provide yourself a little flexibility if your schedule won't allow you to be gone for 6 months or 9 months at a time. The stipends really vary based on where you're going to be. They mostly offer travel funds as well on top of the stipend. They sometimes offer allowances if you have dependents, and even some countries will provide a tuition stipend for dependents so they can go to school in a country that you're in, because often they might not have the language skills to go to the local school. They would have to go to an international school or something of that kind, where the education credits would transfer very easily between US grade schools and grade schools overseas. So that's basically the US Scholar Award. That's our basic award. There's also the Distinguished Scholar Award. This one is a little more difficult to get. It's open to those who have a little more experience, so it's kind of more senior researchers. And they're usually just discipline specific and at specific institutions. So specific institutions around the world will have almost like a named chair position, which is often called the Fulbright Fellowship Chair or the Fulbright Distinguished Chair of Political Science or whatever. And those are one that there are only one per award, whereas the US Scholar Awards, there might be multiple awards per country. There's also a Global Scholar Award that people don't know as much about. So if you have a research project that might take you to different countries or different regions, let's say you're going to do some comparative kind of research, you could apply for one of these awards. They say you have to do 2 to 3 countries during this award and going to 2 different world regions. So the Fulbright sort of breaks up the globe into different regions, such as Middle East and North Africa, or Europe and Eurasia, and Western Hemisphere, which is basically, you know, Central and South America and Canada. And so you'd have to do 2 to 3 countries, and at least 2 of those would have to be in different regions. And you have to spend 1 month in each country at minimum. So you can, again, just like the regular Fulbright, do sort of a mix of teaching and research activities. And you can do, let's say, research in one country, and then the next month go to another country and do teaching, for example. So you can really mix it up. There's also the Public Policy Fellowship. That's for kind of more early and mid-career faculty. And it only goes to certain countries, or it's only an award that is you know, has certain institutions that basically you would be involved in. And this past year, I'm actually not sure what it's going to be for this year, but this past year was Burma, Peru, Cote d'Ivoire, and the Ukraine. And with this award, you would actually be paired with a specific ministry, a government ministry, and work on as a sort of a technical specialist. And you could work on things like agricultural development for that country, economic development, public health, which is probably a big one right now, STEM education, you know, that kind of thing. And so you'd spend about 80% of your time working at this government institution on a public policy related project, and then another 20% on your own independent research project. So I wanted to bring those other opportunities, you know, to light, because a lot of people don't really know about them. They mostly think about the U.S. Scholar Award. So what I would suggest is that getting on the Fulbright mailing list, you can get regular emails as these awards become available. The U.S. Scholar Award opens for applications, so the application portal opens on February 1st. And they're due on September 15th. And I try to send out sort of regular reminders that if people are thinking about one of these programs, to be mindful of the due date. And that's about all I have to say about the Fulbright Awards. Why don't I turn it over first to our Fulbright ambassador, John Rice, who can give us a little more a better idea of what the opportunity, what it's like basically being a Fulbright scholar. And he has a PowerPoint, isn't that right, John?
No PowerPoint today. I just kind of talking about my experiences. I think you've done a great job of covering all of the opportunities that are out there. And I just want to be available here to talk about you know, some advice for applying some of the things you do. I've served on several panels, also review panels of applicants, both for student applicants and for the faculty U.S. Fulbright Scholar Program. So I can give you some ideas on that also as to what you would need to have on there. So I put the put the PowerPoint on hold for that. I could bring one up later if you'd like to, but I think it's probably best if everybody just give their talk. I'm lucky I'm the only one that doesn't have to talk through a mask today. So. Any other specific things about the program? I am part of the ambassador program, Fulbright Ambassador. So after you come back from your program, you'll get an email at some point that says, do you want to be an ambassador? And you do an application. There's about 12 of us a year, 10 to 12. And we basically, usually we go around and would attend one of these sessions on our own, but they're not allowing us to travel at this point. So I'm part of the 2020 cohort. There's a 2021 cohort that just kicked off. So each year there's an opportunity to do this, this type of thing. If you'd like, I can talk about my Fulbright experience, or would you like to, or
Yes,
I can kick
please.
that off now? Okay.
Yeah.
So I did my work like Megan said, in the Netherlands. I chose my slide for that in the background here. I work with dams and levees. I'm a civil engineer and I look at seepage. So levees are very important to the Netherlands, and that's why I chose to work with them. I made my contacts over several years before going there, and that's not necessarily necessary to do, but you'll want to increase your chances if you can make good contacts with people and start to plan your program out, what you want to do when you get there, both with teaching and with research. So I met some people at conferences. We had similar interest in our research. And then I had a great opportunity about a year and a half before the Fulbright to go out and visit these people, because there's a conference I was attending that was only a few miles away from where I wanted to go. So I extended my stay, hopped on the train and went out and talked to some people. Not necessary to do, you can do it through email, you could do it through Zoom and things like that. And then did my application. They thought it fit well with the Netherlands because most of the Netherlands being under sea level, or a large portion being under sea level. Levees, my research area, is very important for them. And so worked with the TU Delft, the Delft University of Technology. I taught a graduate class there on embankments. I learned a lot from that because the soils there are a lot different than they are here in the United States, or most of the United States. And then I also did some research with a professor there, Christina Yomi, who and other members of the faculty that I met after I was there, but also expanded. I had a 4-month Fulbright fellowship. I stayed in Delft for 8 months, talked to another agency, Deltaris, which is a research institute supported mostly by the Dutch government, and did research with them, extended my stay. They actually offered me a stipend. They matched my Fulbright stipend actually for 4 more months to allow me to stay and pay for, basically pay for expenses that way. A great experience, both educationally, research-wise. I now have these colleagues that I've been working with for the last 2.5 years. We've published some papers together. My main contact at Deltaris and I just did a dual keynote address at an international conference. Unfortunately, I had to do it on Zoom, but those types of things. So it was a great experience. And then immersion in the culture was probably as much as the educational experience. Living among the Dutch people, they're not that different from us, but they're different enough, and it's a great opportunity to get over there and see that. So that's why I'm a Fulbright ambassador. It was probably the greatest experience of both of my careers. I have an educational career and a consulting career that I had before. The key of both of those. So I'll stop talking now and let you go to the others. And if there's any direct questions about the programs too, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, thanks, John. Why don't we turn to our newest arrival? You want to start talking a little bit about how you got involved with, the Fulbright program and coming to ECU, and yeah.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Megan. Yes, as John mentioned, or Megan mentioned, I was the president of the African Criminological Society, and we hosted a conference in 2015, and I was looking for keynote speakers, and as the papers came in, I saw a few American colleagues submitting papers. I invited Bill Bloss, who's currently hosting me here, to be keynote speaker. We started discussing collaboration between the two departments and the students. So Fulbright wasn't on my mind at that stage, but we were talking collaboration. I had the opportunity to visit other universities in 2018, and I thought, let me come down to ECU to meet up with Bill Bloss. We discussed collaboration even further, and I decided maybe I must try and come over to ECU for a while, and I applied for I heard of the Fulbright, and I applied for it. There's a long process. It's not just apply and get it. It's quite a process. There's interviews. You have to have a proper research plan. I'm here as a researcher, not as a scholar. But I am teaching. I am engaging with community. I go out to the churches, and as John has said, the cultures are different. I'm enmeshing myself currently in the culture, learning a lot. We drive on the left-hand side of the road, not on the right-hand side, and the steering wheel sits on the right-hand side, not on the left-hand side. So there's a few things that I'm cautious about currently, but I'm getting used to it. The first part, you have to understand you're isolating yourself away from your culture, your position back home, and you have to learn and just take time to settle in. Once you settle in, it becomes much easier. Start to communicate, try and make friends with people. I think that's one of the Fulbright aims, is to meet new people and learn culture and take that back to your country. And I've learned a lot so far. I'm here for 9 months. I arrived in August. My research proposal it's been quite a few loops to jump through to get my research proposal through the IRB, the Institutional Research Board, but it's been accepted. When I finish with this panel, I'm going to send out this is how far I am. My survey will go out America-wide to try and start with my research and get my information in. But I think it's a great opportunity. You have to plan properly before you come with regard to budget. What are your plans? What are your aims? If you've got family, how do you manage that part? So it's not just let's go, it's going to be fun. You must take your time to plan properly. Without the planning, it's going to be difficult for as a human being when you're used to a certain process. This is a new process. So there's things that you must also work on emotionally. And then once you do that, this is it, I'm going to do it. And I think it's a brilliant opportunity. And from my side, I want to thank Fulbright for allowing me to be here and to do the research. It's eye-opening, and I think one can learn a lot. Obviously, the last point from my side, there's certain things that you do not anticipate. There's certain things that let's take, for example, New York. If you go to New York, there's undergrounds and buses and certain things. When you come to ECU, Walmart is 5 miles that way, and Food Line is 10 miles that way. So there's no underground, and the bus system is different. So you have to learn your city where you're going to, or the town, wherever you're going. I would advise you to do a lot of homework to say, okay, I am prepared to go and I know exactly what I'm doing. But once again, thank you, ECU and Fulbright. And thank you for the opportunity now.
It's great. Well, we're happy to have you here. It's you talk about a lot of things that you don't really think about. You think about, oh, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to do research and I'm going to get some great papers out of this and make good, but it's those connections that you make with people, and also that can open up for other things like, educational exchange, with students and that kind of thing. So it's often just bigger than you, right? It's
absolutely, man. And things that I can add, I've already, the networking is brilliant, and teaching the students, there's a different idea in certain students here compared to my students, and it's good to learn from them as well.
Yeah.
And I think with the research, what you've mentioned, there's great conferences in America. So I'm actually planning, I'm going to the Sheriff's Conference in February next year. I'm going to the ACJS Conference in March. So there's a lot of opportunities that you can use while you're on your Fulbright that will enhance your career, and obviously networking is brilliant. So I agree.
Yeah, definitely. David, you want anything? What was your experience like in South Africa? It was almost like a reverse.
Yeah, I feel like I'm back there.
Here.
So I was there in 2011, University of Johannesburg. I was there with the Fulbright Specialist Program. And so that program is a shorter term, or 4 shorter term assignments. So I was actually there for a 6-week period. And it materialized out of a conference that I had attended at Stellenbosch. in 2010, giving a paper, doing a book talk. And someone in the audience from the University of Johannesburg approached me after and said, have you ever thought about a visiting appointment here in South Africa? And I had not, but was certainly open to that possibility. And so we resolved to sort of stay in touch about what that might look like. And I came back to the States and through a series of emails, my contact there at the University of Johannesburg suggested the Fulbright Specialist Program. And so over the course of early months of, late months of 2010, early months of 2011, I worked with her basically to sort of craft my application materials in a way that, with the Fulbright Specialist Program, you go onto a roster and you make yourself available to host institutions. If there's sort of a matched interest, then an opportunity sort of ensues. And so she worked with me to sort of craft the application, the essays, and the sort of programmatic design in a way that would appeal directly to what University of Johannesburg was interested in. And so that when I went through the application process and was accepted onto the roster, University of Johannesburg made the match. We determined a date or a 6-week period. We determined that to be August and September of 2011. Decided that the program would essentially consist of workshops to faculty, to administrators. It would consist of lectures to students, undergraduate students, mainly in the Faculty of Management, and as well some course development also around materials in the Faculty of Management. And so, basically from start to finish, I feel like I was in the very attentive care of my colleagues at the University of Johannesburg. Really didn't miss a trick in terms of preparing for my visit. My family went with me, my wife and 2 sons, and we were provided on-campus housing. I was provided, University of Johannesburg consists of 4 different campuses. And so I was provided with a driver to take me to my various engagements at each of the campuses. And I have to say, I was a little unprepared. I think my family was unprepared for this level of attention. Maybe it's a statement of how little attention my own colleagues pay here on campus.
Give you a driver.
No driver, exactly.
I've got a bike outside.
But it was really quite something. And from the moment we arrived, the kitchen was stocked with our favorite foods that had been arranged before. My contact at the University of Johannesburg called ahead to ask what the boys' favorite meals were, made sure that everything was well stocked, had a wonderful sort of welcome reception and then a welcome bride, which was sort of like a barbecue. And I think we were all unprepared for just that level of care and attention. But it was really quite remarkable. The workshops, the lectures were, at least from where I sat, very stimulating. I had been told that there was not much of a culture or climate on campus for these sorts of conversations among the faculty and administrators and other groups. And so I was asked to come in and talk. The program was really about building the university's capacity for participation in social change efforts with an emphasis on diversity and inclusion. And so the various workshops, I think there were 6 different topic areas, but all sort of around that general theme. And the lectures to students also had to do with this theme of personal responsibility for social change. Just very interesting conversations. I would typically spend the first half of each engagement talking about matters from the US perspective, from my perspective as a US academic. And then the second half would be devoted to a discussion of sort of the South African perspective. But it was very interesting and inspiring work, and the colleagues that I met and worked with there. I continue to keep in touch with, although not as closely as I'd like to. I left the country with plans to immediately sort of parlay the experience into ongoing programs both here and in South Africa. And as often happens, other things sort of flowed into the void that I had created by my absence. And so when I came back, I very quickly sort of resumed old responsibilities and habits. But frankly, this has been a nice opportunity just to re-engage with with the work. I had forgotten some of the things that that we had done there. Very intensive 6-week experience, exhausting and delightful, and I would highly recommend it. And one of the things I love about the Fulbright program is these sort of tailor-made opportunities to do things. As I said, mine was a shorter term engagement. It fit the bill. And so I think there is this nice diversity of programs at Fulbright that allow for numerous and various kinds of engagements. Really profitable.
So David, it sounds like you were treated very well at the University of Johannesburg.
Yeah, it really, I was unaccustomed to, that is a South African thing, by the way.
Michelle was looking at me and we had not given him a driver. All we gave him was a broken.
Maybe I should have mentioned that,
but I think that's wonderful because I think that shows what we can do, what we should be doing for some of these scholars that come in. And we do have Christian, I believe, is our only current Fulbright. We do host them on a regular basis, 1 or 2 per year. And I think this should be a priority of ours to make sure that they're welcome here. Because as we all know, hopefully everyone in the audience understands that the Fulbright program isn't necessarily a research program, it's a cultural exchange program.
Yeah, it's run by the state.
J. William Fulbright, senator from Arkansas, who the program's named after, was a big proponent of cultural exchange as a means of peace.
Yes.
And so,
exactly.
So your story is heartwarming and it's also something we can learn from at the university as well.
It made quite an impression, for sure.
So David, what was your experience like as a student doing your Fulbright program?
So many moons ago. Well, I mean, I think so. Yeah, I was a student, but I think some of the trends hold from what I've heard so far. One is good mentorship. It really takes somebody to make the suggestion that Fulbright is a thing and that you can apply for it, and I'll help you. I'll work with you. Let's share ideas. It is about cultural exchange first and foremost. Also about people getting to know people and exchanging ideas. And my Fulbright would not have happened, to be quite honest with you, if when I was late junior, early senior in college. I guess it really started late in my junior year, actually. A German professor of mine said, hey, if you ever consider, I like what you've been doing in class and in your work, have you ever heard of Fulbright? And I had not, right? And so he basically took me under his wing, and for the next 3 or 4 or 5 months, it is a process. We worked on this application, and I would give him a draft of my statement of purpose, and he would send it back all marked up. And by, the 4th or 5th iteration of that, I couldn't decide if I loved the man for giving me this much attention or if I hated him. And so I think that's kind of where you want to be, and it's a learning process. He helped me make my statement much stronger. There's also for the student applications, there's typically, I forget what it's called, but basically a 1-page document also about who you are, where you're coming from, how this fits in to your academic and future professional life. I would just underscore that it is a process. It is an application. It takes time. It's just not a one-off kind of thing. There are interviews involved, but it can be done if you have good mentorship. If you also take criticism, well, that helps. That's something I kind of learned to do through the process. And then also be kind of strategic maybe about where you're thinking about going. If there's different countries that line up with your research interests, whether you're a student or faculty member, have a look through. Fulbright publishes the data on how many awards are given where. In my case, it was 1992, 1993. I wound up staying in Germany for a while after that. But I knew that I wanted to go to where the action was, and in 1992, that was Eastern Germany, because the wall had just come down in November of '89. So that's what I set my sights on. I think that probably helped me, to be quite honest to you also. If I had chosen Austria, I also thought about Austria. Austria gives out far fewer grants typically than Germany does. I also figured, hey, probably not many Americans are going to be willing to go to Eastern Germany at this time. So, I mean, I think being strategic in how you think about it also helps. That may sound overly, I don't know, maybe overly strategic, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And for me, the Fulbright program was a game changer. It really did propel me into my career. It put me into contact with people I still stay in touch with today in Eastern Germany. It gave me a completely different perspective. I went and I lived with students who had grown up in East Germany, some of whom had never met someone from the US before. They just knew what they had learned in school. So, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the Fulbright program. And of course, the reverse was true for me, right? I had been to Germany before, but I had not met anybody who had grown up in East Germany. So, I mean, I think that's the beauty of the program, and I don't want to keep going on, but those would be the things that I would stress. And I know we're talking mostly about faculty grants, but I would just also emphasize the fact that it is possible for students also to get them. They don't have to be 4.0s. I think I had like a 3.45 GPA. It really is how the whole application fits together. If it makes sense, if you have the context, if you've done the research. And so I would just like to see us as an institution try and take some of our best students, most promising, to the next level with that. They do. Mine was a student grant. Many countries also have English teaching assistantship grants. Both of them are 10 months in length. Yeah, and you get stipend, each month to do various things. For me, I was studying at the University of Leipzig, which just probably a couple of years prior to that had been still the Karl Marx University. I never thought that a guy from South Carolina would go to study at the former Karl Marx University, a guy who also graduated from a military college. So, I mean, I think that this is just, I just say that because this can really be a, transformative event in students' lives.
Yeah. So Todd Fraley is the one who works with the students to as sort of a mentor to put together their applications.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I want to mention as well. If you have students, for those of you who are listening out there, if you have students who you feel who approach you or you feel might be interested in this type of thing, get in touch with us. Todd works with students quite often, particularly at their honors college. But David and I can't remember who the other person is. If it was you, David Siegel, or Christine,
Christine
talked about helping with students as well. So we do have a group of folks here, Todd, and David, and Christine, who are more than willing, I think, to help on the student process. And so kind of think about this maybe for yourselves as an opportunity, but also for your students too.
So Christine, why don't you fill us in on your Fulbright experience?
Okay, so what I did was a little bit unusual. It's in that it's really cultural and less sort of specifically academic. I believe it was Birgit Jensen, who was then in charge of the Fulbright program here at ECU, who may have suggested that I think about Fulbright. I was a faculty member here and have been since '93. So in '99, I started looking just online, and there was only one program in the world for performers, for musical performers, and that was in Taiwan. And it turns out they have a powerhouse Fulbright program. They're tremendous, and they've grown over the years. In 2019, I took a cohort into Taipei on a chamber music program, a brand new, thankfully Global Affairs beautifully supported new course that puts ECU music students together with performers from the conservatory at the University of Taipei. And I took them to the Fulbright office, and I have one former student who I think may yet apply for a Fulbright, because we made such good connections at the University of Taipei. So what I asked to do, and what I think would be my advice, is to find a project where every time you mention it to somebody, they say, oh, that's a great idea. Because I thought what I came up with was very simple. What I wanted to do was take over a program of music that includes flute by living American composers and perform it, rehearse it and perform it over there with people from Taiwan. And in return, I asked to meet composers from Taiwan who were writing music to learn it and to perform it, to bring it back here to perform. And I thought that was pretty simple. And every time I mentioned it to somebody, they said it was a good idea. It took me 3 months to apply. And I probably revised everything about 4 times. The last time was the night before it was due because I pulled up a window that said, uh-oh. Okay, that's what they're asking. That's what they mean about this. And so I went and I revised that. So it worked out and it continues to have a really deep influence on my life. I was a Fulbright reviewer for 3 years. Oh, I stayed for, it was a 9-month project, but they had an extension available for 6 weeks and I stayed 10.5 months. And when the acceptance came through, I was in shock. I was so surprised, but I thought, I've always wanted to learn Chinese. And I was really glad that I went over. And I met people. You see, I was an exchange student from Indiana University, Bloomington. And I ended up staying in Vienna for 5 years and getting a degree there, a diploma, from what was then the Hochschule für Musik und Darstellende Kunst. And it's now the Universität, the University for Music and the Performing Arts. But in the meantime, you get so deeply in, as a student, you get very deeply into the local culture and you meet all your people from all over the world. There are very high quality performers there. And so when I went to Taiwan, I was lucky that they had this huge program, but the man who ran it, Dr. Wu, knew everybody in the cultural center. And he basically took up the application and he talked to the people who ran the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial, National Memorial Hall. And those are those great big buildings in downtown Taipei that are kind of iconic. Every time you see a picture of Taiwan, you'll see those, that they always show that. Well, now they show the tower, which was built since then. But I had an office there in that building, and I got to meet people who were in the Taiwan National Opera, and because they were rehearsing across from my office. So the flutist invited me to sit in, and he had a phalanx of flutes he used for different things, showed me how to read Chinese notation, which is very different. And so, there were all of these connections. And the other thing, though, was when I began talking to people, meeting people, I ran into all these people I'd studied with in Vienna, and they had come back to Taiwan. And one of them, we had played on the street together, Zhang Zhenjie, and he's Taiwan's most famous cellist. And he had written a book about his experience, and I was in his book, and I found that out when I was there. But we used to, we play Bach and Handel sonatas on the street, and somebody would pass the hat, and we get, a huge number of people making a circle around us while we played, and then we'd go take the money and eat dinner. So we were kids, we didn't have any money, we were students. So he was there, and it was wonderful. And a couple of violinists I knew, and then I made friends with flutists and composers. And one of those flutists is married to the woman who is the Dean of International Studies at the University of Taipei. And he's principal flute in the Taiwan National Symphony Orchestra and has been for years. So what really happened, besides the concerts that we played together, the State Department sponsored a recital, and it was fabulous in that art center. It's kind of like their Lincoln Center. But what really happened was the human connection and the long-lasting artistic connections and personal connections. And with the flutists, they are all interwoven. Flutists are a good bunch, and we have each other's backs. I have a lot of friends. They're very dear to me in the flute community, and we run into each other at conventions. I also had the good fortune to go to China for 6 weeks as part of my project. And there, I met Han Guoliang, who is principal flute in China National Symphony Orchestra, and I got to sub with them for a week, and that was incredible. I gave classes at the Beijing Conservatory, at the Shanghai Conservatory, and recitals. And I gave a number of classes throughout the island of Taiwan. And so it was an incredible adventure, and it really hasn't stopped. It's ongoing. And I would say, if you want to go, go. I had the honor to be asked to serve as a Fulbright reviewer for 3 years after that trip coming back. And I just loved doing it and seeing all the creativity and all the projects people come up with. So I was a reviewer for music. So that was just a fantastic experience. And I would say get involved, go ahead, look online, look at what you're interested in doing. What do you want to do, and see what fits? Because that's what happened to me. There was one program I could do.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe they didn't take a dance troupe or a conductor. So, but, you know, I was very, very fortunate, and they carried us around on 2 hands. We were so beautifully treated. I had an apartment. I learned to shop. I learned to speak. The one thing I asked for, and I would recommend this if you can stand it, is ask for housing, ask to find housing in an area where they don't speak English. And I was the only Westerner, and they all knew all my business all the time. And I didn't know that they knew I didn't have a television until 911. Joe I was there when that happened. And all of the merchants were like, teacher, come sit. And it was like, yeah, I've never been so safe.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a gnarly 9 yards, but arts tend to be, I had a very structured program, but all the stuff that developed was very organic, and it tends to be sort of a gnarly ball of yarn. I think that can be fun too, and you have to go with that sometimes. I've never been sorry I did it. I do it again in a heartbeat.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I mentored Sabina a little bit, and she has a Fulbright now to come over here. Andre's wife.
That's right. I think I remember you were, trying to come over. That's great. So maybe now we can open it to questions from people attending online. So are there any questions in the chat, or you can unmute yourself, or well, I can start unless, I'll get started, because one of the things that everyone always asks me as the liaison is, how do you negotiate with your department, to essentially be removed from your normal teaching duties while you are in service duties to go and take on a Fulbright? Because in the past, from what we've heard, it wasn't always as positive. So, but things have changed. And so what has been your experiences? Yeah, Christine.
Mine was so long ago that we had a university leave policy. And I'm asking to speak up because I have to go, I'm on governance committee, and I have to be at the faculty meeting.
Oh, okay.
Today, sorry, I went on too long. Yeah, so I actually filled out an application, and they gave me a choice of a half year full leave or a full year half leave, which was what I ended up taking. So I had partial health coverage during that time. And so if we can come back around to that now, that would be amazing. But because I got the Fulbright, they were very willing. I was so beautifully supported by the School of Music. I'm still grateful.
Great. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, so
Because you were done just a part of the semester.
I was gone just a part of the semester, so it made things much easier. And to be honest, it was never really an issue. My department was very supportive. The College of Education was very supportive. And frankly, I just assumed they would be. I mean, I sort of went into the whole thing thinking, I'm going to do this. And so sort of rather than ask for permission, I just went on with the assumption that they would be supportive, and they were. My colleagues covered classes for me for the period that I was away. And I just resumed my teaching duties when I came back, but it was probably less official than unofficial and informal, but my colleagues just pitched in.
That's great. What about you?
Yeah, maybe I must interject. Yeah, I come from the University of Pretoria, as you heard. We are a contact university, very similar to ECU. We've got 65,000 students. A first year class is 1,200 students. Second year, 750. So it's 3 classes. So if we leave, you leave a huge void, because there's one lecturer that runs with all those students. You assess them. you contact teaching. We used to do back-to-back lectures, Afrikaans, English. They've taken out the Afrikaans, it's only English now. But because of the big groups, you go back to back. And I thought, what am I going to do? It's a 9-month tenure. I really want to come here. So I spoke to my dean and my head of department, and we made a plan together. I said, you go, and who do you identify your different fields of specialization that will be able to run your modules? And we went through a process. We identified individuals, and they said, okay, go, we'll take that person and that person. So I know that there's quality people standing in, the students are in good hands. And I think that mustn't be a issue to say, who's going to take over in my place. You must let those things go, because this is a great opportunity. Rather plan around that and take the opportunity. That's my advice.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I think it's important to sort of, if people sort of forget and get, your chair or whatever gets lost in sort of the nitty gritty, the weeds, right? Of like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Is, remind them, it's like, this is a really prestigious award and it looks really good for our university and our department. So, we kind of need to make this work. And I think, the one thing, and I'll get to John in a second, but one thing, I think sitting down with your department chair and being sort of like, okay, even before you apply, I want to do this. How can we make it work? And there are different ways to make it work, where you can get, either, essentially the equivalent of your salary, or take leave with pay and have your Fulbright stipend on top of it. And it really depends on, what the needs of the department are in terms of, do they have to hire someone to come in and teach your classes, or can they just, sort of say, okay, we don't have to teach those classes this year. And it's going to be sort of tailor-made, I think, for the particular situation in each program. It really is up to the department chair.
So that's the way it currently is. And that is something I would like to address, I think, at
Yeah.
the university level, because I think this is
I think so too.
too big of an important of a program.
You have to take on. Thank you so much, Christine.
This is one
Thank
of the
you.
most creative things we can do as a university. I'm truly, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is such an important thing that it seems that there should be some direction, a little bit more.
A more formal process.
Exactly. And it is something I would like to try to pursue, see if there are possibilities for at least some guidelines, because as it stands, it is very much up in the air and it's contract kind of between, or an informal contract between the faculty member and the department head, which works often, but sometimes there might not be a great relationship. between the two,
Exactly.
And that shouldn't necessarily punish,
That's
Yeah, exactly.
faculty member for if they have a good opportunity. So this is something I think that that we should probably look at as a university to figure out if there's some kind of standard at least, instead of having this kind of be very ad hoc, which it seems to be kind of now. It generally works out, but that might be because we don't know the circumstances where it didn't work out and the person is no longer with ECU or something along those lines. We wouldn't want to, jeopardize relationships with good, strong faculty members over disagreements on how to work.
Yeah, exactly. And we shouldn't have, those faculty who, maybe are in a department that's a little more strapped, sort of, again, be sort of almost punished for wanting to leave as opposed to somebody who, their classes can be sort of put aside for the years. It's very easy to have somebody else sort of take them up and, it's true.
So I wonder if John has any comments.
That's what I was gonna say, John.
Yeah. I'll add a little bit to that. I think there's a little bit of a delay here on the speak. So, one thing, my university is very supportive of sabbaticals, and even more so if you have that Fulbright in your hand. I got notification about a week before the sabbatical application to my university was due. I got notification that I'd received the Fulbright. So that worked out very well for me. Another thing that happened in the Fulbright is I had contact with my professor, my host professor, and she had written the letter of invitation. And when I did get the Fulbright, I sent it to her and she said, oh, that's great, but the timing's bad because her situation had changed. She'd taken a split between Delft University and TU in Milan. And she said, can you shift it? The Fulbright was very flexible in that. I just notified them and said, hey, can we shift the time? They'd set a time for me. And they were very flexible with that. So you can try to do that also with your department if that's going to be a problem for you to shift it. One thing for me as maybe a bigger deal as a STEM professor, but maybe not, is my research program. What do you do with your research program when you leave? And there's several
grad
instances.
students and, yeah.
Right. So I had a PhD student that was in the heat of a laboratory modeling study where he needed a lot of guidance. And so I kind of traded back and forth with another professor who I had done the same thing for. And he was kind of my eyes and ears in the US. It's a lot. He took care of some of the little problems. And we had a lot of Zoom calls where we discussed things. I also had a project going on with Thailand at the same time with US, Thailand, and myself. And we did a lot of Zoom calls with that also. Actually, it was Microsoft or whatever, but we do these calls. The only problem with that is me being the lone person in the European time zone, it was 3 a.m. when I was on the call. So things like that I experienced of dealing with the absence. My department was very supportive, and my colleagues did fill in for me. I taught extra classes the year before and the year after, so I did fill things in, and mostly graduate classes so that they could be filled in. A couple other of my colleagues I will make note of. One colleague did a Fulbright in Finland and brought a student over with him for a portion of the time. That wasn't funded by Fulbright, but he did get funding for that on that project. So that was a great experience for that student. I was able to go over and see part of what was going on with the Fulbright. Another one of our ambassadors, he's a volcanologist and went down to South America, Chile, to study volcanology. The class that he did, he set up a program where students from his university came down to Chile, and he ran a course that he got credit for teaching at his host university, and had a course that had both Chilean students and students from the US all together in one course. So it was a great opportunity. That was run over a short time. I think he did it in 5 or 6 weeks. So the travel was less. The students had to pay some of their travel, but they were happy to do it because they had a live volcano down there. So it was a great experience. So a lot of different things that you can do. And it's great to hear. I think a lot of universities now are being more and more supportive of the sabbatical leave policies, because they do see what a great benefit they get from that, of someone coming back and bringing all of these experiences back with them.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And that is one thing. If you're doing a teaching, if you're doing a Fulbright that does involve teaching, you can always teach, a hybrid class where you're perhaps face-to-face in the country that you're in, but your ECU students either Zoom in or, if there's some way to arrange to have the global classroom, when they're not teaching, when you're not teaching your global understanding classes, or teach it as a global understanding class. So there's a lot of ways to sort of be creative about it, especially now that we've gotten much more used to, doing things virtually, that, it might work a little better. I mean, no one wants to teach while they're on a research fellowship if you are doing a particular, a fully research program, but and I don't want to encourage that as being necessarily the best option, but it is an option if there's let's say a grad seminar that really you're the only one that can teach, and you could just, do it online while you're doing your research program. I don't think teaching a 400 person intro class would be the best thing, but I'm sure there are ways to get around that. And also, people always ask about service too, so I was, as COVID hit, I was on a research fellowship, not a Fulbright, though I would like to apply for a Fulbright to go back, but at Durham University in the UK. And in that case, I still continued my service activities while I was in the UK, and it worked out very well. Again, just now, especially since a lot of the meetings are hybrid or virtual, to take on that kind of to take on that service. And also when you return, you engage in a lot of service activities as well. I mean, being a Fulbright ambassador, having, applying to have visiting scholars, you can be sort of the leader to apply to have visiting Fulbright scholars come and give lectures on campus through the lecturing fund that they have. You can serve as a reviewer for students applying like Christine did. So there are a lot of ways you can kind of, what am I trying to say, give back to the university in terms of service once you've completed your Fulbright award. So it's, and if anyone has any, kind of wants, a list of things, I guess, to have at their disposal that they can use for bartering, to do this kind of leave, I can, sit down with you and we can sort of think about creative ways to try to get you to be able to go where, it's not going to be such a detriment to people back in the department while you're gone, I guess. Do we have any questions from the chat, or if not, we can probably, I guess, wrap it up since it is 4 o'clock. Do you have anything else to add, John?
No, I don't know that I have anything right now. I would just encourage anyone watching or anyone out there, if you are interested, if you're a faculty member, definitely get in touch with Megan. She's been very helpful with our outgoing, our faculty who put in proposals. If you have students who might be interested in this type of thing, Todd Fraley, David, Christine are all people that you can direct them to. And if you forget all of that, just remember global affairs and we'll point you in the right direction.
Exactly.
There's also the web page, and I think if you're even thinking of going on a sabbatical, look on there. It's pretty easy to use, and you can put in different regions of the world. You can put in specific countries, and you can filter for your disciplines. For instance, I put in engineering, and it shows you everything that's specific engineering, and it shows you those that are general, that anybody, any profession or discipline can apply for. You can break it down to a specific country and look what that country has to offer. If you're interested in working with someone or some region, like the volcanologist, there's only a few volcanoes in the world that he wants to look at. And so he was able to look at Chile, what's available in Chile, what kind of program. So first thing, I think that was the first thing I did. I went to a meeting like this, and then I went and got online and just started doing all kinds of research online to figure out what you can do. And we'll say the awards are all different depending on the country and what they support. That information is also on there as far as your travel funds and how long the program is. Some of them are a few months, and some of them are a full year type of thing. So explore that and take advantage of that also. Exactly.
It's your friend. The website's your friend. And also want to give a plug for Dr. Vizoinhout, who is here as part of his Fulbright, is to give lectures to, classes and to community events, that kind of thing. So if you want to host him to give a lecture in your class or for your department, just, I can give you the email or we'll get you in touch somehow. That's it. So thanks everyone for coming and,
Yeah, thank you to all our panelists, and thank you very
Yeah,
much,
thank you
John,
very much,
for
everyone.
joining us as well.
You.
Definitely,
And,
thanks, John.
And we'll put that for those of you who are on the call now, we'll put this up on the ECU, on the Global Affairs webpage, on the International Education Week website. So if you see it, or if you want to share it with others, it'll be up there.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.